Welcome back to Dr. Grimm. Today, I'm prescribing you with a dose of malicious compliance. Let's begin. Did you mean not to turn in the project? I'm a college student studying engineering, and I transferred into my university as a junior. While trying to find my way in this new college, I joined an extracurricular project team that participated in the same competition that my old college participated in. I had experience as a leader in my old club and was ready for the new experience of letting someone else lead for once. As someone interested in technical writing, I chose to join teams who had written project deliverables. The competition we compete in is annual and is very comprehensive in their rules and rubric about deadlines and requirements. This team that I had joined had participated in this competition for nearly a decade and had a few successes along the way. Despite the fact that these successes had happened before the time of almost anyone currently on the team, they still felt like they were top-notch. After reading the judges' comments on the papers that they had turned in, I really didn't understand how they could feel so proud of the work that they put forth. To say that this team was disorganized is an understatement. There was sort of a manufactured bureaucracy where people in leadership positions were intentionally less transparent with those who didn't have the same standing in the club. This caused lapses in communication, duplicated efforts, and incomplete work deadlines. This wasn't the case for every leader in the club, but it was certainly the case for the leader of the team I was on and the vice president of the club. When I joined the team, I made sure to figure out who my points of contact would be. I wanted to get to work on the major paper associated with this project because it was already late October and there was quite a bit of technical work to figure out in order to write it properly. The team leader hadn't ever competed in this particular competition and had the same lackadaisical attitude as the rest of the seasoned members, thinking they could pull off a project in a short amount of time due to their sheer knowledge and experience. I found out the day after I joined the club that there was a big deadline coming up in 10 days. I found out the team leader hadn't even started on it and seemed unaware of this deadline before I had brought it up. When I met with him and the president of the club, I made a map of information that we needed from different people and insisted on holding a meeting with certain leads on the overall team. After much insisting, they arranged to hold the meeting several days later, just a couple of days before the deadline. I ask team leader if I can come to the meeting, and he says no. I ask the prez, and he says that I'd be overstepping, despite the fact that I'm on the sub-team writing this assignment and the entire point of this meeting is to gather info for that assignment, because it's taking the place of a leadership meeting and I am not leadership. I was left waiting for the crunch of time when I'd finally be provided with vital information to work on this part of the project. When they had the meeting and relayed what they had done, I had to scramble with them to edit what they had put together and still try to fill in holes because I wasn't there to ask pointed questions. The thing we turned in was rushed and not of high quality. When I asked about the gigantic technical paper in October, the general consensus from team leader and several members of the leadership team was, it's pretty early to start that. We wrote that paper in 3 days last year, and our team placed in the top 25% in the competition. The vice president even told me to go home and to not worry about it. I tried scoping out team leader's plan for this project, and it appeared as though he hadn't even fully read the rubric. At this point, I nitpicked the rubric and meticulously created a task sheet that would aid in managing this project so that we wouldn't miss any major portions of it like the last paper. I showed it to the team leader and he seemed generally all right with it, so I figured that we'd use it to keep track of the progress from then on. Turns out he didn't care to use it and continued to work in his own folder without communicating that to the rest of the team. There's a second paper on a side project that the team is required to do for the competition. I was very involved in my last team's side project and instrumental to the paper writing, so I wanted to see what was up with this team's stuff. I found the judges' comments, specifically pointing out grammatical errors and failure to abide by the rubric, but I couldn't seem to find the paper in the drive. I asked the vice president for it, and she, in a very unprofessional way, told me that other people would handle it and that I didn't need to worry about it. I eventually got the paper through some pushing. I get to work on the project and update the task management sheet I created months ago that everyone had agreed at this point was the best way to keep track of the project, and realize that no one else is hitting these deadlines as we go along. Even team leader has some excuse for not doing his part. At one point, I accidentally sit in on a leadership meeting and find out that there's a lot of juicy technical stuff that I haven't been exposed to because I don't go to 15 hours of various club meetings a week. Apparently, the team leader had been exposed to all of this and didn't bother to take notes. Since this information was very useful to the paper, I asked him to take notes. When he replied that he already did, I asked to be a part of the meeting. To that, I was turned down because it was not my place to sit in because I wasn't a lead. During the second semester, a major change was made to this competition, and it caused the written deliverables to have a much higher value in the final score. Since the technical subteams for this historically don't deliver, this was our chance to actually place at the competition. Major decisions were being made that I could have used to do my job better. I was putting my time and resources on the line at this point because it was extremely important that we take advantage of this change. I also figured it would be a chance for some leads to see my value and take me seriously. Again, I'm not allowed to partake in the meeting with the leadership in the club where decisions would be made about my resources. So, deadlines come around and the technical paper is finally due. Guess who's up late because no one took the deadline seriously? This is exactly what I was trying to avoid, but to no avail. I'm stitching things together as people are still writing them and team leader is occasionally coming back in to watch. As I'm referencing old documents, I realized the outline team leader gave me was copy and pasted from our team's paper that placed well 3 years ago in competition. Apparently, it took him 3 weeks to figure out how to copy this outline that was outdated in the first place. There's a length limit for the technical paper, and at this point, he is still insisting on including insignificant details while running the risk of running out of space. I don't even fight him and override these silly comments. I just have no energy for this stuff at this point. 2 days before this giant technical paper is due, the president asks me to change the cover. This cover had already been approved by everyone, including him, and was already turned in on another document. This was the last thing I wanted to worry about when it abided by the rules and so many other things did not. I had a feeling that team leader was behind this, yet again not bothering to communicate with me in a timely manner. I find out around this time that team leader is also working within his own folder instead of the team drive we set up at the beginning of the year. He hadn't shared it with me yet and wasted my time as I tried to find information. The only reason I did find out was through the president, who he had already shared it with. Odd move considering he didn't share it with the one person, me, who was designated to format it into the final document. So we turn this thing in and I am physically sick from the late nights and mentally tired from the difficulty I've been given for the entire year. I have been told no when asking for information and don't worry about it so many times. I had no trust and no responsibility. It clearly didn't matter to them that I was ready to put in extra work during crunch time. There was one more assignment that fell under team leader's reign. I had mentioned the timeline of it a month ago and people were definitely aware. Remember that significant competition change I mentioned before? The one that made this last assignment very point-heavy and vital to any chance at placing in this competition? It was technically optional, but any team that cared about overall score would complete it. I figured team leader would naturally step up and take the lead that his position entailed. I began to intentionally not say anything about the project to see if it would be as successful as the leads always said it would. The next 2 team meetings were canceled an hour before they would have happened, characteristic to how team leader handled meetings. No mention of this project was made during those 2 weeks, and I intentionally didn't raise a finger. From the little that I heard about the other sub-team meetings, the assignment wasn't being prioritized. In the final week, I let my friend in on the fact that I wasn't doing a single thing unless the lead mentioned it. I had been told that I was overstepping as a new member and that I was doing more than I should be, so I figured I'd listen for once and relax. In the last 3 months, I had started my own club so I would have an established extracurricular by the next year regardless of how my current club turned out. The 3rd week passed and the day before this last assignment was due, team leader canceled the meeting once again, saying that the team was out for the rest of the year. Yippee, summer break! So I decided to finally figure out the details. Within 10 minutes of his message, I asked what the update for this assignment was. A full 24 hours after the deadline, he responds that they didn't turn it in. All of the reasons he states are bogus and inconsequential. My intuition and involvement in the club tell me that it was put off until the last minute and then no one could actually figure out how to put it together well, so they just let it go. I want to emphasize that this year was one of the few years that this team in its current state would have had the chance of placing in the competition. The part of the competition that they regularly failed at wasn't a factor this year, and they could have stepped up. A full year's worth of work was put in to be thrown away at the end because, without that last assignment, there was not even a slim chance at scoring high enough to place. Too bad placing also meant a relatively large cash prize that the team could have used for the next year's project. After all of that, the vice president, who I mentioned before, became president for next year. There are a list of reasons why I wouldn't be sane working under her rule, and some outweigh even the negligent team leader's shortcomings as a leader. I started my own club, and some of the people who I originally introduced to the project decided to join my club because of the chaos they experienced on that team. Someone who was not even on the sub-team is now the team leader for next year because the entire team dispersed at the end of the year. Nobody there actually wants to dedicate time to the technical paper, which means things are going to turn out like they did before, solely because the technical people just don't care about it. I didn't mention that the college I came from was a junior college competing in this competition for the first time. That team of inexperienced underclassmen beat this team last year. Ironically, the same people who pat themselves on the back for doing so well last year were the ones who made it difficult for me to work on this team. Teamwork can be a blessing or a curse depending on the dynamics. In this case, it sounds like our protagonist was way more skilled and invested in the project than the rest of the team, and in that case, sometimes it's better to just cut your losses and move on. One final note before you go, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers, which will allow me to provide you with even more quality audio entertainment. Click the subscribe button today. Thank you for listening to Dr. Grimm. Have safe travels and be well.